Alright, hi everybody. I'm going to talk to you today about doing some paper mache. The first thing I'd like to do is talk to you guys about materials and setup and how to stay clean and not mess stuff up in your house. So with that being said, the materials are really simple. You're going to need all-purpose flour. Don't get whole wheat flour. It just doesn't work. It doesn't create a bind quite like just regular white bleached all-purpose flour. So get a bag of that. You're going to need a metal or glass bowl. The reason why it's metal or glass is because the flour will have a tendency, if it's a plastic bowl, it will have a tendency to actually glue to it. So ceramic will work. So a ceramic bowl, metal bowl, or glass bowl to do the mixing in. And then you're going to need paper. I don't get the newspaper at my house, so I ended up just rummaging through the junk mail and found junk mail to use. I also got a mail from some, I don't know, financial prospectus thing. It was just this big document that I really don't need, so I'll tear apart the pages from this and use that. You can see I have right here, I have just a pile of torn paper. I would recommend tearing the paper instead of cutting it with scissors, because the torn paper actually will adhere to itself better. The kind of frayed edges will glue and stick to the layer underneath it a lot better if you tear the paper instead of cutting it. And then you need something to keep your workspace clean. I put down a white piece of paper and I use masking tape to tape it down. You could use plastic bags. You can use like paper Whole Foods bags. The point is, this does get messy, and the flour and water, believe it or not, will just make glue. So if you get glue on your parents' table or your kitchen table or your countertop, they're not going to be happy. So do this in the garage, someplace where you don't care about getting messy, or take the time to line wherever you are working. So line it in several sheets of newspaper and tape those down. Line it in other types of paper. Get plastic garbage bags and tape them together and line it down, and take your time to set up a nice station so you don't mess up your parents' house. The last thing you're going to need is some kind of form to put the paper mache over. Traditionally, people use balloons. This is a great form for creating round shapes. Now, you can create an entire balloon to make an entire orb or surface, circle or sphere, or you can do half or parts of it and then take those parts, and if you make multiples of them, you can then stitch them together to create something different. The other thing you can do for forms is just take plastic garbage bags. It's important that the form that you make is plastic, so it can be crunched down and pulled out of the paper mache form. If you do something, you make a piece of a form that's out of a solid material that cannot be crunched down, you're going to have to wrap it in saran wrap or something. But I just took some plastic garbage bags and scrunched them together and used tape to kind of tape it together to create this kind of form with some negative space. It's sort of like an arch or a hoop. And I'll show you and demonstrate how you can wrap this in paper mache and get the same kind of effect. So those are all the materials that you're going to need. Mixing paper mache is really easy. You're going to start with warm water from the tap, and you're going to put it into your bowl. And then you're going to slowly start adding flour until it gets to the consistency of like a real thin down milkshake. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of water. I probably have this bowl filled not even a third of the way, and this is a pretty small bowl. The one piece of advice that I can give you is only mix enough paper mache for what you're going to use, because you're going to throw this out when you're done. You're not going to dump it down the sink. Again, you're making glue here, and if you dump glue down your sink, it's going to cause all sorts of problems in your pipe in your pipes in your house. So you're just going to mix enough to use, and then that's it. And if you need to mix another batch, it's really easy and simple to do. So I'm taking my clean hand, not my wet one, and I'm sifting it through my fingers into the bowl, and I'm mixing with my other hand. I kind of use my fingers to kind of mix through this. You can use a whisk. That's another option that I've seen people do with some success, is they get it and they whisk it. I will get a whisk in a second. I'm going to sit there and whisk this around. And again, I'm doing this until I get a consistency that's thicker than milk. It's like a thin milkshake. Definitely not as thick as like a Wendy's Frosty. That's going to be actually a little too thick. So this is about pretty good here. It should be kind of like cake batter, like you're pouring cake batter, or thinner than pancake batter, I would say. The whisk really does work well, so if you have one, it's a great tool for mixing this together. And it's as simple as taking your form and dipping one piece of paper in it at a time, running your fingers over the paper so that it's not pooled up with paper mache, and laying it on the form. If you're using something like a balloon, have something underneath it. I end up having a roll of tape underneath it to keep the balloon from moving. And I'm dipping, running my fingers over this. Oops. Yeah, see, this can get messy, and I kind of made a mistake, but I'm going to keep moving forward here. You want to build this up in layers. I generally try to cross the layers of paper. It makes for a stronger bond. And one of the things that you want to make sure that you're doing is that you do this in thin layers and you let it dry. This is the biggest thing that, the biggest problem that people have when they're doing paper mache, is they're not patient enough to let the single layer, so you're going to do a single thin layer and let that dry overnight. And then the next day you're going to add another layer and another layer. As it gets thicker, you can add more layers, but it's really important for that bottom layer to be thin enough that it really has time to fully dry. And you can see, again, I'm crisscrossing my layers here. At some point, if the balloon starts to get too goopy and too wet, I'll just take a dry piece of paper and put it on top of that and work it in. Go on YouTube, look at videos of other people doing this. There's lots of different recipes for paper mache. This is just the easiest one. It's just really simple. Flour, water, and some patience, and you can get that going. So I'm going to speed the video up a little bit and show you the rest of this, putting together a layer, but you can start to see it. It's building. I'm crisscrossing the layers, and I'll speed the video up, show you where this goes, and then if I have time, I'll do a video of me layering on top of the other form that I created with plastic bags and packing tape, or masking tape. Again, you can see it's starting to get a little goopy, so if I just put a regular piece of paper on top of this, I can smooth that in and it'll sop up some of that excess glue. So now that I'm done, I'm gonna have to leave this overnight to dry. You'll notice that I just put about 1 or 2 layers on, overlapping 1 or 2 times. I turned the balloon a lot to make sure that I got the full half sphere. I'm gonna leave the bottom part, I'm not gonna bother with that. A couple things that I would probably change. I don't know if you noticed in the video, but the ball rolled off of my stand. I used this roll of tape, which I'm actually worried that I'm ruining right now with the glue that's on it. So if I were to do this again, I would probably tape the balloon down to a piece of cardboard or something where it's not gonna move, and then that gives me a stable surface to work with. I'm probably not gonna have that problem when I do this one. But now, as you can see, I've made a mess. There's glue all over the piece of paper that I used to protect my countertop, and I need to clean up now. So I'm gonna wrap up my plastic bags, and I'm going to discard this in the trash. Please do not dump this down the sink. Grab a garbage, pour it out in the garbage. Get all of it scraped out. Use a paper towel to get all of that scraped out if you can. You don't want to pour glue down your sink. And essentially that's exactly what this is. When you're done wiping this out, you can then run water in the dish and clean it up.